What's going on, everybody? C4 here. Welcome back to the channel. And as you can tell by clicking on the video, it is time for my 2020 NFL predictions with kickoff just under 24, just a little bit over 24 hours away. I think that's the much needed distraction the world needs right now, getting back to football. And hopefully, all those rednecks and stuff in America start wearing masks so that we don't have to worry about the football season eventually getting canceled the second way. All that stuff. Just do your job. Just don't be an asshole. Do your job. I want football. I don't want to cancel. So today we're going to be doing our predictions. How I did it is I went through Madden. We went through week by week. There's pros and cons to doing this. The pros are I kind of view everything by a matchup. Because on paper, you might think a team, that's a 10-win team. Look at all the talent. But in reality, when you look at their schedule, they might have like one of the hardest schedules in the NFL. And it might be like one of those things where all their really tough opponents are like on the road for them. So it was good to give me a clear mind there. But the downside is I didn't really have the big picture when all is said and done, looking at these standings. Some of them I'm like, ugh. Like you told me right now, if you told me how many wins do I think Philly's going to get, I would say the Philly's probably a 10-win team. 9, 10 wins, somewhere in that range. I don't think I would have Philly getting 11, but when all is said and done, I had Eagles coming at 11-5, just for an example. So we're going to go through that. I'm sure it's fun. I got the glasses on here, the shield protectors from all the nonsense and the I don't know. I don't want to insult anyone, but let's be honest. The comments and all that stuff's gonna be probably pretty heated because anytime I talk about this, people are gonna get upset that I kind of shit on their teams. But last year I was pretty good. My predictions from 2019 were pretty damn good. I had Baltimore winning the North. I had Houston winning the AFC South. I had Tennessee getting 10 wins. They only got 9, so I was a little bit higher on Tennessee, but they were obviously a breakout team last year. I had the Patriots winning the East. Buffalo Bills were one of my blessed teams on Twitter. Every year I bless a team that didn't make the playoffs. And for the last 3 years in a row, my blessed teams have gone on to make the playoffs. The Bears, the Jags, and the Buffalo Bills. This year, my blessed team was the Denver Broncos. And they look pretty good until, the ball dropped and Von Miller's out for the year. That's kind of going to obviously affect them. One of the best edge rushers in the NFL. And you'll see where I now have the Broncos, but they're still blessed. Who knows? They might be able to find a way to persevere. But back to the predictions. The West in the AFC was the only one I got wrong last year. I actually had the Chargers winning it, but I did have the Kansas City Chiefs making the wild card, so that's like a half point. In the NFC, I had the Saints winning the South. I had the Eagles winning the East. I had Chicago winning the North, which was kind of gross, but I did have Green Bay making the playoffs, and I actually had Minnesota getting 10 wins, which is what they got last year. And then the West, I had Seattle winning the NFC West. They didn't do it, but they made the playoffs. That's like a half point. And then ultimately, I had the Kansas City Chiefs going all the way to the Super Bowl, which obviously they did, but we won't highlight what team I had them losing to the Super Bowl because that's just not important. So let's look at my predictions here for the 2020 season. And we'll start in the AFC North and work our way down. So I have the Baltimore Ravens going 12-4 on the season. I think, you look at what they lost, obviously the Earl Thomas thing, it's kind of late in the game for that cut to happen, but I trust Baltimore. They're one of the best run organizations. For the Ravens, though, I do think you're going to see a little bit of a learning curve for Lamar Jackson. That script on how to beat Baltimore that the Tennessee Titans applied in the playoffs, there's just going to be a lot of teams that use that as the basis now to stopping Lamar. So I don't think we're going to see MVP Lamar, and I say that as someone that is very vocally a Lamar Jackson homer. I've loved Lamar Jackson since his time in Louisville, and I hope he does well. I hope he keeps electrifying the league, but I think there's going to be a little bit of a regression there, but still 12-4 for Baltimore. They're very good. This is a big-time window for them to challenge for another Super Bowl. I actually have Pittsburgh and Cleveland making the playoffs in the wild card. 9-7 Steelers, 9-7 Browns. Now, there's some questions for the Steelers. They're an old team. I think relatively old. Big Ben, the O-line's getting older. Defensively, some of their big stars are older, but I think still an underrated defense. Minkah Fitzpatrick was electrifying last year. I think they're going to be good. I think they're going to be solid. And same with the Browns. I actually think the Browns, and I'm not shitting you, I think the Browns are going to be good. And I think a lot of people like to poop all over the Cleveland Browns and like to think that, they're kind of crappy. But I think the Browns are solid. Odell Beckham Jr. is, people keep kind of thinking that guy is absolutely the shits. But I think Odell's solid. But ultimately, for the Browns, new head coach, I think they're the best 1-2 punch at running back. I think the new head coach will at least make Baker not brutal. I think we will see some development in Baker Mayfield, obviously defensively. As long as Myles Garrett's not conking dudes over the head, he might be pound for pound the best defensive player not named Aaron Donald in the NFL in terms of talent and freak athletic ability. So I actually think the Browns are a little bit of a sleeper team after I despised all of the hype that Cleveland got last year. I hated it. I was like, oh, no, they're not going to be that good. I actually could see the Browns making the playoffs this year. I think they're going to be a little bit surprising. I have Cincy going 5-11, trending in the right direction for a strong year for Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow will be the offensive rookie of the year, but they're just, a little too much on the O-line. I don't know where the O-line's at to maximize the skill position players that they have on offense. Can AJ Green stay healthy? Does their defense even really have an identity right now? Like, their two best D linemen are kind of older in Atkins and Carlos Dunlap. Linebacking core is going to be very young. The secondary is, the new free agency. There's not going to be a whole lot of chemistry in the secondary, but I don't think Cincinnati's going to be picking, top 5 or anything like that. They're going to be showing a lot of signs that they're going in the right direction. AFC South, I have the Titans winning the South at 11-5. Really only thing against Tennessee is what kind of Ryan Tannehill you're going to get, but I'm going to gamble that he'll be fine. They paid Derrick Henry, so he's happy. A.J. Brown, I think, is an emerging star at wide receiver. Defensively, with the addition of Jadeveon Clowney, they're going to be a tricky team. I don't think we're going to see enough out of Tennessee to change their reputation. Let's be honest, out of all the teams in the NFL that are pretty competitive, Tennessee's like the most meh. Like, they're not overly exciting to watch. There's nothing too flashy about them. They grind out victories and stuff. And that's just what they are. I still think they're going to be that. Obviously, you get the occasional highlight reel play from Derrick Henry just absolutely destroying a couple people. But they're going to win ugly, and I think they're going to do and be efficient enough to get into the playoffs and win the division. I actually surprisingly had Houston make the playoffs as well. 9-7. It's going to be all on Deshaun Watson. Obviously, the loss and all the trades and the roster management and Bill O'Brien's an absolute meme, but they're still a really, really talented roster. I think there may be some questions on the defense side of the ball. The O-line's not great, but I'm gambling on David Johnson. I have David Johnson in all of my fantasy leagues. I think Bill O'Brien will try to get as much of that old prime Arizona Cardinal David Johnson as he can. And then Deshaun Watson, man, I'm a Deshaun Watson fan. I think he finds a way to get it done. Colts will be competitive. They'll be in that wild card spot. I just think Phillip Rivers is old man Phillip Rivers. He's going to be the Rivers that we saw in the Chargers, where there'll be a couple good games and then just a couple games where it's like, what are you doing, old man? These are terrible decisions, terrible interceptions. It's going to be like me playing Madden 21. I just don't think that Rivers is going to be the guy to take the Colts to the next level, and they really need to prioritize getting a nice young quarterback, whether they think Jacob Eason's going to be that guy or not. But I think the Colts are still, at the end of this season, going to be like, well, it was better than Brissett, but we still definitely need a quarterback. And then we got Jacksonville. They're clearly tanking, 2-14. AFC East, I have the Buffalo Bills win the AFC 10-6. I mean, you look at the Bills; they were strong last year. They're my blessed team. I gambled if it is. I don't know how much I put on the future. I didn't make a whole lot of money. I think I only put like $10 on them to make the playoffs. But 10-6. I mean, you look at them; they didn't have a lot of draft capital because they brought in Stephon Diggs. And as long as you can get that minimal improvement to Josh Allen, there was just too many games last year where Josh Allen was not good enough, like under 200 yards. Like, I don't know. I just remember that one game against the Patriots. The Bills should have smoked the Patriots, and then Josh Allen just kept missing throws, kept not making plays. He got knocked out. Matt Barkley finished it, and they were just so close, but they could not beat the Patriots. And that's like always how I feel about the Buffalo Bills. Is like, you just need that little bit more of development of Josh Allen. I think Bills could take over the AFC East for the next couple years. So I don't know if that's about Buffalo bringing a new QB coach or something. Because I don't hate Josh Allen. I just think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. And is he getting the proper coaching in Buffalo for him to take his team? Because right now, I think about defense. I think about Sean McDermott being a very, very good defensive coach. Do they have the offensive guys that can help Josh Allen take his game to the next level? But at least you got someone like Stephon Diggs who should certainly help out. I have New England not making the playoffs. I think obviously it's Bill Belichick. I was going to put respect on his name, and just Bill Belichick not making the playoffs, it doesn't make sense. But there's just so much against New England. I'm not going to make them awful. I think they definitely could squeeze into the wild card or something like that, because it's still Bill Belichick. It's still a Bill Belichick defense. But they have like the most opt-outs of COVID. So many new moving pieces on defense. Their draft wasn't particularly great. Cam Newton, is this post-surgery Cam Newton going to be like prime MVP Cam Newton? Probably not. But there's a chance that he is. But I'm going to say just the odds say that it's most likely going to be the Cam Newton that we saw in Carolina. So the Patriots aren't going to be bad. It's a Bill Belichick team. There's no way they're going to be bad. But I actually have them missing out in the playoffs. I just don't. I just think it's too stacked against them, and they did not have a good enough draft for me to be excited about their young players to say that, well, these young guys can step up and fill the void for some of the veterans that are no longer there. Dolphins and Jets, yeah, it's, we know where they're at. I think Adam Gase is the worst coach in the NFL. He should be the first coach fired. but I'm not down on Darnold. I think that Sam Darnold can definitely continue to develop. I think Joe Douglas is a really strong general manager, but the Jets, especially losing Jamal Adams and stuff, they're more so building for the future. Same with the Dolphins, with Fitzpatrick being the starter. I think there's going to just come a point where like they'll be in all the games. I think they'll be a very competitive team, but there's going to be that transition between Fitzpatrick to Tua, and there might be some hiccups there, some growing pains along the way. It's just not that time yet for Miami, but I think they will be competitive. And then finishing up in the West, I think Kansas City, #1 team in the NFL. Barely any roster turnover. Their opt-outs, they had Tardif opt-out, the Canadian, and I think they replaced him with, like, I could be wrong, but I feel like Khaleesi Assembly. And then Williams, the running back, opted out, who was great for their playoff run. And then they just drafted Brian Westbrook 2.0 for Andy Reid. I think Kansas City, yeah, absolutely. The Chiefs are going to be the #1 team, I think, in the NFL. Patrick Mahomes is my prediction for MVP. I know, bold prediction, but I just think there's just too much firepower. And I think the rest, it's going to be real tight. I have Denver. I bless them. I think they hopefully, if my little blessing continues for 4 straight years, they will find a way to get in the playoffs. I think people are sleeping on Denver just a little bit. They made a lot of great free agency moves, win-now moves on the defensive side of the ball, getting Jarrell Casey and improving that secondary. I think Drew Lock takes his game to a next level. I love their skill position players. It's just the loss of Von Miller could be the deciding factor of that 1 or 2 wins that could put them into the wild card or have them just miss the playoffs. So I think Denver's going to be very competitive. I think the Raiders are going to be very competitive. It's going to come down to Derek Carr. I think Ruggs is a great player. The Raiders' offensive line is good. Their run game's on point. A lot of questions on that defensive side, though. The Raiders don't really have an identity on the defense side of the ball. Their secondary wasn't particularly good. They couldn't pass rush. Their linebacking cores, I mean, they spent a lot of money, though, in their linebackers and stuff. I just think offensively, the Raiders will be on point, but I think defensively, they might fall a little short. And then we get the Chargers. I think Chargers have a playoff caliber team on paper, but ultimately it comes down to the quarterback spot. I think Tyrod will be fine. I think they'll have a fine offense with Tyrod, but then eventually there's going to come that point where you want to flip to Herbert, and there might be some growing pains. I think Herbert gets in week 10, 11, 12, somewhere in that range, and it's kind of like Miami. I think the Chargers are going to be competitive, probably a little bit more competitive than Miami, because I wouldn't be shocked if the Chargers can find a way with Tyrod, if they just roll with him with a hot hand, and they can squeak into the playoffs, but right now, I do think the West might be the most competitive division, but definitely give me Kansas City. And I guess because I was throwing in some predictions here, I think Defensive Rookie of the Year is going to go to Patrick Queen on the Ravens. So Defensive Rookie of the Year, Patrick Queen. Offensive Rookie of the Year, Joe Burrow. And my MVP is going to be Patrick Mahomes. So going to the NFC, we'll start in the North. We'll actually have Minnesota winning 10-6. It's tied. I think it's really razor thin when you're comparing the rosters between Minnesota. Like, really, the edge here would be obviously give me Aaron Rodgers every day of the week over Kirk Cousins. But I think the Vikings getting Ngakoue. I'm going to trust Zimmer with a kind of unproven secondary they have there. But Zimmer is a very good defensive coach. Dalvin Cook, as long as he doesn't hold out. You have Justin Jefferson who could step up. Hopefully gets a bigger role as the season goes on to really fill in the shoes of Stephon Diggs. And the Vikings schedule is not brutal. Like, there's a lot of winnable games there. It's not an extremely... It's not a cupcake schedule, but I think the Vikings could win the division. And you have Green Bay. Obviously, we all have made a lot of note about just how gross their draft was, but the talent is still there. Defensively, their defense was really underrated last year, borderline good, especially with the edge rushers, the Smith brothers, and you got Jair Alexander, and Kenny Clark on that D-line. It's just their run defense was like weirdly bad last year. So I just remember the Eagles game. Eagles ran all over them, man. Jordan Howard absolutely abused the Green Bay Packer defense. And did they do enough to get better at linebacker? No more Blake Martinez, but are they replacing him? Who are they replacing him with? Kind of deal. Did they get Kirksey from Cleveland? I still think they'll be in the playoff line. I think Detroit could be a sleeper playoff team. I have them at 8-8, but Matt Stafford, before he got hurt last year, was playing like an MVP candidate in that conversation. I just think more so Detroit's going to realize this year that Matt Patricia, you got to move on from Matt Patricia. He's a defensive guy, and Detroit's defense has not really take leaps and bounds to go in the right direction. He's kind of scared away Darius Slay, like all that. I don't know. I think Matt Patricia will be holding back the Detroit Lions. They'll be competitive this year. I think Stafford has a great chance to just be unreal again. Offensively, Galladay's a beast, but yeah, just missing out here 8-8. And then the Bears, you have no quarterback. Trubisky's your starter. Even though your defense is really good, I think the Bears are going to have a little bit of a reset and hopefully suck enough that they can get a franchise quarterback in the 2021 draft. South, we have New Orleans winning the division 11-5, actually tied with Tampa. I just think the Saints clearly an all-in right now. I think you will see some big regression from Drew Brees. playoff Drew Brees might carry over into the regular season because he was not good in the playoffs last year. So yeah, I'll say Saints still talented roster, should make the playoffs. Tampa, I think Tampa might have the most underrated defense in the NFL. Might be some growing pains with Tom Brady and all those new faces on the offensive side of the ball. Maybe a little bit of a slower start than expected, but once they get the chemistry going, there's just so much talent on Tampa that, I have one hand that I feel like they're getting overhyped a little bit like the Cleveland Browns were last year, but at least they have proven talent, unlike Cleveland where it was just the assumption that those guys will hit their ceilings all at the same time. So give me Tampa there. I have Atlanta at 8-8. I think as much as I like Dan Quinn, I think an 8-8 would get him fired. And that window of like Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, and that's pretty much the identity of Atlanta. That window is getting very, very small. So I think Atlanta would have to kind of do a very quick turnaround, not a rebuild yet in 2022. So I think 8-8, yeah, they're both there. And then Carolina, I don't think Teddy's really going to help them. I think they're going to be in a good position to draft a new quarterback in 2021. NFC East, I have Philly at 11-5. Like I said, I know obviously Eagle fan, everyone rolls their eyes, but I actually was surprised it came to 11-5. I think Philly right now is a 9 to 10 win team. 11-5, maybe if we stay healthy, but we all know that's not going to happen. Philly's going to get ravaged with injuries sooner than later. But I still think it is obviously a two-horse race in the East between Philly and Dallas for the best teams, because Giants, I think offensively the Giants are going to be very explosive. I think they're going to be actually an exciting team to watch, but defensively they're not good. Washington is very much in a transition. I think Washington as well. Like we see, and you look at the roster, there's talent there, but what's their identity? What's going on at quarterback? The running back situation is not great unless Gibson really takes off. So who's going to replace Trent Williams defensively? What's their identity defensively? Strong D-line, pretty good run defense, but pass coverage, did they do enough to solve all those answers in the secondary? I don't think necessarily Fuller is that's the guy that'll turn it around. So I don't think really the Giants and Washington are not going to be instant wins for almost everybody. I think they'll be an annoying bad team, but that's where the records are. They have Dallas at 9-7 and Philly winning the division. I think it's obviously going to be between the Eagles and Cowboys, and obviously with Philly getting the lead because it's my goddamn video. What else did you expect? And then for the West, I have 49ers winning it. Kind of like Kansas City, not a lot of turnover. Buckner's probably the biggest loss, but they replaced him right away with Javon Kinlaw. Obviously, you're not going to be able to expect Kinlaw to play as a rookie and fill in exactly what they're losing in Buckner, but I think the 49ers, the question is still around that secondary. That's really what cost them the game against Kansas City. And you got Sherman, an aging Sherman, and that's kind of it. So, but outside of that secondary, the Niners are going to be really, really solid this year. A little less depth at running back. Questions about Jimmy Garoppolo. Can he actually be a quarterback and not just a guy that hands the ball off 30 times a game? So those are valid. But I think the Niners, just because of the lack of turnover, they're still going to be a really solid team. And they got Trent Williams, which is a huge get for that O-line. Seattle at 10-6. I think they just squeak into the playoffs. I gamble on Russ out of all these teams. I think the West will be the most competitive division in football. I have 9-7 for Arizona. I think Cliff Kingsbury could be the coach of the year just for another year of his offense, another year of all that stuff working. I just think Arizona's defense and offensive line might still let them down just a little bit. But if I had to take a gamble on like a real big outside bet for MVP, I think Kyler Murray's looking a little juicy right now if you want to try to make a lot of money on a little investment. Rams got a lot of talent. Running backs, there's some questions about the running game, some of the depth. They have a lot of star talent, but the back end of some of the starters there are not particularly great. But I think the Rams will be competitive. It's going to be the NFC West will be definitely the best division in football, I think, and I think all those teams should have aspirations of sneaking in the wild card at worst. So then that leads us here to the playoffs and my prediction for the Super Bowl. Obviously playoffs, when you get to the playoff actual predictions, it's a little bit tougher. The Wildcat, I just take a shot here. Took an absolute shot. I think the championship games, we have Baltimore and Kansas City. Not a crazy prediction. I think they're the two best teams on paper. And again, when you do these prediction videos so far ahead of time, you can't predict injuries. So you kind of almost have to go on the assumption, like, these teams are going to be mostly healthy. And I think if Baltimore is mostly healthy for the season, and Kansas City is mostly healthy for the season, they are still the two best teams, the two premier teams in the NFC. But give me Kansas City over Baltimore, and look at the Saints and Niners. I kind of view this game as like, the question I think would honestly come down to the quarterbacks. Is Drew Brees going to regress? Or where's Drew Brees really going to be at like year 58 of his NFL career? And then you still have Jimmy Garoppolo with the questions of, can he take his game to the next level as a quarterback and really develop as a passer and utilize like Deebo Samuel, and will Brandon Ayuk have a breakout year? Are they still going to be a team that can run the ball, but when they need the quarterback to throw the ball, Garoppolo falls short. So this basically comes down to who do I think and believe more in, either Drew Brees or Jimmy Garoppolo. Give me the slight edge right now to Drew Brees and the Saints team that is absolutely all in for the playoffs this year, because their salary cap is horrific. And like a lot of people are like, how are they even going to field the team next? Like, this is the last year, I think, in the Saints window. There's just no way from a salary cap standpoint they're going to be able to, be legitimate, I don't think, beyond this 2020-2021 season. So I have the Saints and the Chiefs making the Super Bowl, and honestly, it is incredibly lazy. But then again, it's kind of bold. I think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to win back-to-back Super Bowls. And it all comes down to the fact that when you do these predictions, you can't foresee injuries. You got to almost assume that if these teams can stay healthy, if Kansas City can stay healthy, I don't think there's a team that can beat them. They have like zero roster turnover. Debatably, their roster might even be stronger than what it was a year ago. I think they had a really, really good draft. I think someone like Willie Gay could surprise as a breakout candidate at linebacker. And everyone's happy. Everyone got paid. That was like looking to get paid. And, you got just Mecole Hardman can take another step. I think you're going to get more dynamic ability and playmaking ability from Edwards-Helaire than what they had last year at running back. It's just, I don't know, man. Like I said, I don't know if it's a lazy prediction because they just won the Super Bowl, or is it bold, assuming that a team can win back-to-back Super Bowls. But as it stands right now, give me Kansas City. So that will do it for me today, guys. I'm sure you guys will have at it in the comment section below with who I thought sucked, who I thought was good. Let me hear it. Let me hear your predictions. Who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl? But I have Kansas City and my prediction for MVP in Patrick Mahomes. As always, though, if it's your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. Working our way to 150,000 subs. Smash the like button if you were at least intrigued and liked hearing me talk about the season. I'm sure most people are just going to be upset that I crapped all over their team. I didn't have their favorite team making the playoffs, but it is what it is. And hopefully, guys, tomorrow we will be back with a worst case scenario. I'm halfway done recording the new Lions episode. That will drop. Best case scenario, if I have a lot of time tonight and I get up early enough tomorrow, I might have the first preview highlight what's going on for the new rebuilds on the channel. But I'm not going to rush the rebuilds. I do not want anything about those rebuilds to be rushed, to be copied, anything like that. It's going to be something hopefully different, even though I don't really want them to be hyped up or anything crazy like that. But yeah, that will be tomorrow. But thank you for watching, and until next time, it's C4 saying peace out. Thanks.